They called her the visionary. I was just the guy behind the screen, until she mocked me in public. The condo was too quiet for this late in the evening. No hum from the espresso machine. No echo of stilettos across marble tile. Just the faint buzz of Manhattan beyond the triple-glazed windows. I sat in the study, backlit by a flickering desk lamp. The same one she once claimed ruined the aesthetic. She'd long stopped entering this room. Or maybe I had willed it so, slowly surrounding myself with things she couldn't curate. A soft chime on my phone pulled me from code to reality. An email from Helix's legal counsel, Victoria Lane, signature verified on amended founding docs. Not addressed to me, likely meant for Noah, but the CC field must have auto-filled me from the old founders list. A ghost in the machine. I clicked. Incorporation notes. Stock redistribution. Intellectual property attribution update. Language as clean as it was lethal. My name was there, and not crossed out in black ink on a scanned PDF. Someone had printed the official draft and struck my name through manually, like a teacher grading a bad essay. I froze. Somewhere behind me, the fridge compressor sighed. In that moment, I hated its honesty. Machines didn't lie. People, on the other hand, could turn memory into myth and call it branding. I opened the drawer beside me. Hand steady. Beneath layers of receipts, post-it notes, and a gold-plated Helix X keychain lay the USB vault. Matte black, fingerprint locked. It clicked open with a soft hiss. Inside, encased in foam, was my personal archive. The original Spectre code, Helix's nervous system before branding. Before marketing decks and TEDx soundbites. The hallway light flicked on. Victoria's heels approached, then stopped just shy of the study door. She didn't enter. "You coming to the run-through?" Her voice was sugarless. I didn't answer. "Ethan," she added, like she was reminding herself I still had a name. "No," I replied, eyes on the screen. A pause. Then the gentle click of a door closing behind her. It was always this way now, short sentences. Long silences. I turned back to the screen and searched Noah Green. His LinkedIn gleamed. Chief Innovation Officer. Helix X. I'd met him once. He wore cashmere hoodies and quoted Naval Ravikant like scripture. Victoria had introduced us as if he were an intern. Smiling too wide. But the email revealed more. Attached was a term sheet. And buried within the fine print, my signature, electronically appended, on loan documents filed 6 months prior. Except I never signed those. My chest tightened. I opened the document in Adobe. Tracked the metadata. Timestamped during a week I was abroad. Her digital signature platform had auto access via our joint cloud account. The IP address was our condo. She'd used my name, my legal presence, to guarantee a bridge loan. To fund Helix's pivot. Without me. Without consent. I leaned back. The walls of the study felt narrower. The bookshelf to my left, lined with leather-bound management books, seemed to curl inward. I pulled one halfway out, The Innovator's Dilemma, and pressed the back panel. Click. A compartment opened, revealing an envelope. Inside, the original Helix X Incorporation draft. Dated. Notarized. My name in ink. Hers too. I stared at it, then slowly turned to the monitor where the new version blinked mockingly. In my earbuds, an old voicemail played, Frank Lane's voice. "You're brilliant, Ethan, but brilliance without charisma? It's like code with no UI. Victoria gets that. She knows how to tell the story. You just build it." The sound made me cold. There had been no praise in his tone, just condescension dressed as flattery. I checked my secure inbox. One new message from a burner contact. Spectre patent still clean. Vault intact? I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled down the original email again. The last line read, "Once the IPO hits, Ethan's out of the picture." Before she was a face on Forbes. She was a student eating ramen while I coded until dawn. I stood on the cracked pavement outside Cafe Orion. The neon sign still flickering after all these years. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside. Greeted by the familiar scent of burnt espresso and overworked dreams. The place hadn't changed, same mismatched chairs. Same stubborn barista who still pretended to recognize me. A few college students hunched over their laptops in the back. Eyes glazed with ambition. I chose a corner booth, the one near the power outlet. It was where Helix X began. Before it had a name. I pulled out my phone and stared at the photo again. A grainy snapshot. Me in a hoodie. Her in oversized glasses. Both of us hunched over laptops. Victoria had scrawled, "Next big thing," on a napkin and tucked it under my keyboard. I still had that napkin. Somewhere. That night, I'd written the first 1.000 lines of Spectre's logic core while she drafted branding pitches in a spiral notebook. She was all ideas. I was all execution. We made sense, until we didn't. The flashback dissolved as I stepped into Helix XHQ later that morning. The lobby was a museum to Victoria's image, portraits, awards, framed magazine covers. There was no sign I'd ever existed here. The receptionist offered a tight smile. Fingers frozen above her keyboard as I walked past without a badge. My nameplate was gone. In its place, a frosted glass sign read, "Zen Room, Center Your Greatness." I stared through the pane. Aromatherapy diffusers, Himalayan salt lamps, meditation cushions. They'd turned my office into a goddamn yoga cave. Noah Green passed me in the hallway. Too distracted by his phone to notice. Or pretending. He wore his usual smug indifference. Earbuds in, hoodie zipped halfway over a Helix XT. I didn't stop. I wasn't here for confrontation. Not yet. Outside, I called Rachel Monroe. "Tell me you still believe in plausible deniability," I said as soon as she answered. A pause. Then her low chuckle. "Depends. You about to confess to a felony?" "Not yet." I told her what I needed, an entity. Offshore if possible. Masked ownership. I wanted it quiet. Buried under layers. Like a subroutine that only ran when the system was idle. "Spectre Prime?" she guessed. My silence confirmed it. "You realize if this escalates, you'll be fighting not just her, but the Lane Empire. This isn't college politics anymore." "I'm aware." "Then say it." I hesitated. The words felt heavy. Irreversible. "I'm committed. Fully." She exhaled. "I'll send you a secure link. Use the vault key from law school. And Ethan, this isn't just code anymore. It's war." I ended the call and pulled my laptop from my messenger bag. I tethered to my private server. Fingers flying across keys. Spectre Prime's architecture was already skeletoned, modular. Encrypted. Designed for scale but invisible in the digital noise. I began uploading its core files to a secure offshore node. Hosted through 3 shell companies Rachel helped me set up years ago as a hypothetical. Spectre wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. The first ping came while the files loaded, an encrypted signal blinking in the corner of my screen. I clicked. A single message. From an anonymized source. "Brittany says she's seen the rehearsal. It's ugly. They dressed it like a gala. She turned it into an execution." Chandeliers glistened above the ballroom like frozen lightning, catching the gleam of crystal flutes and sequined gowns. The Waldorf Astoria was dressed to the teeth, gold drapes. String quartet. A curated guest list heavy with venture capitalists, senators, and tech columnists. It smelled of money and anticipation. I stood near the back, nursing a bourbon I hadn't touched. The tux itched around my collar. Unfamiliar armor. I scanned the room. Rachel leaned against a column near the AV desk. Her phone angled just enough to suggest it wasn't idle. Brittany paced by the bar, wringing the clutch in her hand like it held absolution. She caught my eye, hesitated, then looked away. Victoria glided to center stage. The applause was immediate, thunderous. Spotlights kissed her in all the right places. She wore a deep sapphire gown, one she used to save for private celebrations. My throat tightened. "Good evening," she began, voice velvet-wrapped steel. "Tonight, we honor the future, not just of innovation, but of vision." She was flawless, effortless, and lethal. She wove tales of Helix's rise. Careful to use "we" when quoting success metrics, but "I" when discussing risk, leadership, and courage. Her smile sharpened as she mentioned the myth of the reclusive genius. Of tech introverts who build in silence but fear the spotlight. The audience laughed, too politely. My hand clenched around the glass. The ice had melted. Rachel moved closer, whispering, "Press are in position. Livestream delay is 10 seconds." I nodded once. Across the room, Brittany inched toward me. Her lipstick had faded. Her eyes darted like prey. "You still have time to leave," she whispered. I looked at her. "So do you." She bit her lip and vanished into the crowd. Victoria launched into her final crescendo. "Some of us," she said, pausing for effect. Build futures. Some hide behind firewalls. Gasps. Laughter. Scattered applause. It wasn't even veiled anymore. I reached into my inner pocket and retrieved the envelope. White. Unmarked. Slightly creased where I'd held it too tight. The music paused. The room swelled with silence. I stepped forward. Click. Rachel's phone started recording. Victoria turned slightly. Surprised. Not alarmed. Not yet. I have something to add. Justice isn't loud. It's printed on legal letterhead and timed to a room full of cameras. The spotlight shifted as I stepped onto the stage, casting my shadow beside hers. Victoria's smile faltered, just enough to be visible to those watching closely. I took the mic from the stand with a calmness I didn't feel. The envelope cool and certain in my hand. I won't take much of your time. I began, voice steady. Helix X was built on 2 codes, one for machines, one for ethics. Murmurs swept through the crowd. Phones lifted. The room stilled like an audience waiting for a punchline. But this wasn't theater. This, I said, holding up the white envelope, isn't about ego or image. It's about ownership and consent. Victoria's expression hardened, but she didn't speak. Not yet. I turned toward her and offered the envelope with both hands. For you. Her fingers hesitated before taking it. The music had stopped. Even the waitstaff froze mid-step. As she broke the seal, Rachel, standing near the mediarizer, tapped her screen once. A silent command. Across the room, phones buzzed. Reporters' devices lit up simultaneously. The email arriving in unison. Helix X misconduct, legal evidence enclosed. Victoria unfolded the letter slowly. Her eyes scanned the first page. Then the second. Her lips parted. The document was clear. A cease and desist order based on intellectual property infringement, misuse of electronic signature, and fraudulent misrepresentation of co-founder rights. Accompanying exhibits outlined Spectre Prime's original architecture, timestamps, and my notarized ownership dating back to the cafe days. The email trail showed how my name had been used, without my consent, to secure a multi-million-dollar loan. I watched the realization settle into her spine like cold metal. A ripple of whispers surged through the audience. A man in a tux mouthed, "Cease and desist," to his companion. An influencer near the front was already tweeting. Camera flashes erupted, not for her this time, but for me. Victoria blinked once, then twice. Still holding the papers, she turned to me. "This is ridiculous," she whispered, voice shaking. "No," I said quietly. "This is legal." Rachel stepped forward and handed printed copies of the investor memo to the Lane Foundation's compliance officer. The man, startled, took them without question. Gasps turned to soft applause from a few corners of the room. Eleanor Lane looked stunned. Frank's jaw locked as if chewing a bitter pill. Then Brittany's voice sliced through the tension like a scalpel. "My account's frozen," she shouted, holding up her phone. "What the hell is going on?" The only signature missing was hers, and I didn't need it anymore. Rain traced slow, deliberate paths down the windows of the 27th floor office, each droplet more decisive than the voices inside. The room was carved from polished walnut and white marble, a monument to quiet power. But today, power was shifting. Rachel slid the final contract across the conference table, her expression unreadable behind wire-rimmed glasses. Her hands didn't tremble. Mine didn't either. Frank Lane leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers like a man still trying to play chess in a game already decided. "We can spin this," he said, his voice silked with desperation. "Ethan, don't be rash. There's room for you again. At the top." I didn't respond immediately. I let the weight of silence settle into the grain of the table, into the air between us. Victoria sat across from me, perfectly still. No makeup today. No earrings, just the pale echo of someone who'd already lost. "You called me irrelevant," I said, voice level. "I made myself untouchable." Rachel cleared her throat. Per Clause 19C, all Lane family holdings tied to Helix X equity, including derivatives and IP sub-licensing, will transfer effective immediately upon signature. Frank's jaw ticked. "You want to dismantle everything we built?" "I already rebuilt it," I said. "You just didn't notice." The corporate lawyer, a man with tortoise-shell glasses and the caution of a chess arbiter, nudged the pen toward Victoria. "Ms. Lane." She stared at the page. Then, without a word, She picked up the pen and signed. Her eyes were empty, but her hand was steady. Rachel collected the documents and flipped through them briskly. Confirmed, she said. Spectre Prime now holds full proprietary rights to the Helix X codebase, along with 47% of all contracted distribution channels. The balance of power has been transferred. Frank's chair scraped as he stood. You'll regret this, Ethan. Empires need faces. I rose too. And code needs a conscience. I replied, then added, more quietly, don't confuse dignity with silence. I turned and left before either of them could respond. Outside in the hallway, a courier stood waiting, coat slick with rain, envelope in hand. Mr. Reyes? I took the sealed letter. No return address, but the handwriting on the front was hers. When the story broke, they called me the silent founder. That was generous. I was the architect. The lights in the studio were warmer than expected, designed to soften edges. Flatter jawlines, smooth over exhaustion. I sat across from Eliza Trent on the Forbes Tech Live set. A low glass table between us. My tie a shade darker than regulation black. Off camera, a countdown flickered silently. You've never done press, she said, smiling professionally as the red light blinked on. Until now. I nodded once. I've never needed to. The interview was live. No room for edits or spin. That was part of Rachel's strategy, complete transparency or nothing. I kept my tone even. Factual. I described Helix's early days without embellishment. Just a methodical recounting. Servers built in dorm closets. Neural maps tested on borrowed hardware. The midnight bugs that nearly broke everything. Eliza tilted her head. And your name was removed from the original filing? I held her gaze. It was never meant to be a solo act. Until someone decided it was. Across the internet, the clip was already viral. Twitter, or X now, was ablaze. The hashtag Ghost Architect trended by noon. Some users praised me as the quiet genius, the ethical founder. Others wondered why I'd waited so long. Suspicion bloomed like rot. Was it ego? Was it money? They didn't understand. They never did. Rachel kept the pressure steady. She sent curated packages to tech journalists, academics, former colleagues, proof of my authorship, development logs, time-stamped builds from 2015. She coordinated op-eds with surgical precision. Ethan Reyes, the man behind the mind. Then Brittany broke her silence. A screenshot of an internal memo hit the wires. All pre-2017 materials must attribute founding to Victoria Lane. Legacy docs citing Ethan to be scrubbed. Her caption was a single word, truth. It detonated. Investor calls surged. The Lane Foundation issued a generic statement, non-committal. Corporate. Victoria remained silent. Her social accounts went dark. Then Eliza Trent leaned forward during our second segment. There's one more thing, she said, eyes flicking to her producer. A screen behind us lit up. Grainy footage, old, distorted, time-stamped from a dusty laptop camera. Me, barely 20, fingers flying over a keyboard. A whiteboard behind me covered in network diagrams. Victoria sitting nearby, laughing softly, holding a ramen cup. The genesis of Spectre, of everything. Where did you get this? I asked, voice lower than I expected. Eliza. Rachel's voice came through the earpiece. Calm but tight. We didn't authorize that feed. The anchor offered a small, unreadable smile. Anonymous source. Said it was time. Later that night, back at Rachel's office, the lights dimmed and the city pulsing outside. She stared at her encrypted inbox. A new message blinked into existence. No subject, no sender trace, just 5 words. Victoria wasn't working alone. The first time she cried, I almost believed it. The second time, I saw the script. The cafe was dim, carved from warm wood and soft shadows. Candles flickered in glass globes. Rain tapping softly against the fogged windows. Outside, Prospect Park blurred into a watercolor of gray. Inside, silence held the room like breath. She arrived late, dressed in charcoal wool and understatement. No makeup, no earrings. Her eyes were raw, as if sleep had been an enemy for days. I didn't stand, didn't offer a greeting. She sat across from me, hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea she wouldn't touch. You're hard to reach, she said softly. I'm not hiding. A pause. I know. She exhaled slowly, watching the steam rise. Frank gave me an ultimatum, she said. 2 years ago. He said if I didn't cut you out, the funding would vanish. IPO would stall. Helix X would die before it flew. I didn't answer. The words hung there, carefully rehearsed but delicately spoken. He made me sign the NDA while you were in Houston. Said it was just formal. Said you wouldn't care. But I sat outside the boardroom afterward. I cried. I remembered that week. I remembered her silence on the phone. The clipped answers. I'd chalked it up to stress. Deadlines. She stirred the tea absently. He said you were a liability. Too ethical. Too unscalable. Frank says a lot of things. I murmured. She looked up then. For the first time, her eyes met mine without flinching. I didn't want to do it. But I did. That's on me. From her coat, she pulled a small folded paper. Yellowed at the edges. She slid it across the table with trembling fingers. I couldn't say this out loud. I opened it slowly. Handwriting I recognized instantly, looped. Meticulous. Angry in places where ink had pressed too hard. Lane Foundation donations, off-book. Foreign accounts. Faked matching pledges. Frank said it was a temporary solution. I helped bury it. I'm sorry. I folded the note once. Then twice. And slipped it into my coat. She sat still, as if waiting for something, mercy. Maybe. Or wrath. Why now? I asked. Her voice cracked. Because I'm done lying. Because you deserve to know everything. Because I still. She didn't finish. And I didn't ask her to. I left first. No hug. No threat. No promise. Later, in Rachel's apartment, I sat by the window as she sifted through digital records, cross-checking the donation note with existing leaks. She's unraveling, I said, but maybe that's not the point. Rachel looked up. What do you mean? I stared into the November dark. What if she's not the endgame? They took my name off a door. I built a tower they couldn't touch. The launch of Spectre Prime wasn't loud. It was precise. 3 strategic partnerships unveiled at the Austin conference. Each one timed down to the second. No grandstanding, no fireworks, just impact. I stood before a subdued crowd of analysts, developers, and venture sharks, all trying to decide whether I was a phoenix or a fluke. Rachel stood in the wings, nodding once when the final demo streamed without a hitch, autonomous diagnostic AI that had mapped a failing logistics grid in under 12 seconds. Applause followed, tight and efficient, no standing ovation, but I didn't want one. This wasn't for them. That night, back at Spectre's minimalist HQ in Lower Manhattan, the mood was light but tempered. We had built something unkillable, code with a conscience. Finally unleashed without corporate dilution. Rachel handed me a glass of water. Not champagne. Message just came in, she said, sliding her tablet toward me. Someone filed 4 new LLCs with Spectre in the name. All registered offshore. All ghost shells. I scrolled through the registry data. Seychelles, Panama, Belarus. 3 used nearly identical formatting to our brand documents. The 4th was off by 1 digit. It's not just mimicry, I said. It's preemptive laundering. They're setting up to pin something on us. We moved to the security lab, an underground room with no exterior network ports and a biometric firewall Rachel had insisted on installing after the Gala fallout. I ran a full sweep of the admin logs. At 2:13 a.m., an anomaly blinked across the feed. A handshake request. IP. Legacy address tied to a Helix X archive node. Dormant since 2020. Encryption. Outdated, but embedded with Level Z credentials. Signature. Frank Lane. I froze. Rachel leaned in. You sure? I nodded slowly. He had this clearance, but he was never supposed to use it post-exit. This means he had access to an old dev tunnel we never decommissioned. I opened the firewall's test shell. Ran a trace on the ping vector. The interface flickered, then blacked out. Then, text. White. Centered. I built that firewall too. I stared at it, unblinking. This wasn't retaliation. It was a game, and Frank had just made his first move. Victoria betrayed me to survive. Frank erased me to control the future. The archives of the Lane estate were colder than expected. Dust clung to leather-bound ledgers. Ink faded on pages older than the IPO filings they tried to obscure. Rachel and I stood among them, gloved and silent, as if we were in a mausoleum where ambition came to die. It began with a slip. A line item buried in a 2019 Lane Foundation ledger. Consulting fee, Spectre Holdings Limited. We traced the routing code. It bounced through 4 countries before vanishing into a now-defunct bank on Malta's east coast. That's not consulting, Rachel said, her voice flat. That's laundering. We spent the next 3 days unearthing files, doctored timelines, revised tax receipts, meeting transcripts redacted by hand. Every one of them pointed to Frank. In a flashback pulled from an internal Helix X video cache, Victoria stood hesitantly beside him, visibly shaken. Frank tapped the table with his ring as he spoke to her. Remove Ethan now. The SEC won't touch us if it's clean on paper. Don't make this emotional. She nodded, eyes wet, and left the room. He smiled. Alone, Rachel met with a senior investigator from the IRS's Financial Crimes Unit on November 17. She laid out the shell companies, the falsified donations, the tax-evasive offshore funnels. The agent, a man named Caulfield, asked only one question. How long have you known? Rachel looked at me, then answered, long enough to bury him with it. The deposition took place inside a sealed federal conference room. No press, no distractions, just light, glass, and the slow unspooling of truth. Frank sat with his arms crossed, mouth twitching when Rachel read off the offshore accounts. He interrupted only once. I built Lane Inc. with blood. You think code scares me? Rachel didn't blink. No, she said, sliding the final file across the table. Law does. The silence that followed was deafening. An hour later, agents escorted Frank from the building in cuffs. Outside, beyond the perimeter of flashing cameras and hushed murmurs, a lone figure stood beneath a willow tree. She didn't cry. She didn't move. Victoria just watched. Alone. She took my name off a company. I wrote it into the future. The rooftop of Spectre HQ was quiet this time of year. Cold wind rolled off the Hudson, carrying with it the scent of steel and new beginnings. I stood alone under a bruised November sky, watching the city pulse below, unconcerned with triumphs or losses. Just moving forward, the way I intended to. The email hung in my office again. Same header, same timestamp, but this time, no red slash through my name. No erasure. It was framed, behind glass, silent proof that I had been there first. And last. They offered me the reins of Helix X. After Frank's arrest and Victoria's exit from the board, the investors had scrambled for stability. A reconciliation arc, they said. Redemption for the brand. I declined. Rachel didn't ask why. She simply handed me a mug of coffee and said, "Good, let's build something that doesn't need vindication." Spectre Prime had outgrown its shadow phase. The summit, held in a quiet auditorium tucked into the MIT campus, was by invitation only. No cameras, just thinkers. Rachel introduced me with a single line. He never needed the spotlight. Just space to work. I walked to the podium and let the silence settle before I spoke. Legacy, I said, is not what you build. It's what they can't take from you. Afterward, someone asked what I'd name the new initiative. I smiled. Not yet. Names matter. They stick in places code doesn't. Later that night, I passed by Victoria's old penthouse. The lights were off. Movers had come and gone. The lobby attendant said she'd left a letter. But it was just a single line. You were right to walk away. I didn't respond. Back at Spectre, the lab was dim but alive, machines humming. Whiteboards filled with questions we hadn't answered yet. I sat before the screen. The cursor blinking on a blank new file. No anger. No nostalgia. Just clarity. And the first line of something no one could ever rewrite. In the quiet aftermath, he didn't need applause or headlines, just the truth finally standing where shadows once ruled. What began as betrayal became a calculated reclamation, and every silence he endured echoed louder than their speeches ever could. Justice doesn't always arrive in fury, sometimes it wears a suit, carries a file, and waits for the right moment. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody. Justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. And in that stillness, a new name begins, not shouted, but earned.